Podcast ENRICH Innovation Station. ENRICH in Brazil is the Brazilian center of the European network of research and innovation centers, created with the support of the European Union. With partners from Brazil and Europe, the objective is to strengthen cooperation in research, innovation, and bilateral businesses through the exchange of innovation practices, experiences, and knowledge. ENRICH can contribute not only to the progress of research, science, technology, and innovative businesses, but also to the realization of the enormous potential of the countries involved. This series of podcasts aim to support the ENRICH mission in Brazil and to share innovative knowledge and practices between Europe and Brazil, and to present you the main protagonists with the greatest initiatives on each side and the concrete possibilities of joining forces to overcome our common challenges. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good night for everybody listening here. A new podcast of ENRICH in Brazil and Confap, a new podcast of Innovation Station. And today we will talk about something very important, not only in Brazil, but also in the European Union, water resources. So we have pleasure to have here two guests. We have Madame Dominique Darmendrail, Water GPI Coordinator of the French Research Funding Agency. Welcome, or bonjour.
Bonjour. Hello, everybody.
Happy to have you here. And we have Mr. Oscar Cordeiro Netto, Director of the Brazilian National Water Agency, ANA. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night also for you, Mr. Cordeiro Netto.
Good morning for me, good afternoon, good night for everybody. Nice to be here.
Happy also to have you here. So let's start talk about water resources. I'll start with Dr. Dominique about how do you see the cooperation between Brazil and the European Union regarding water resources?
Can I ask first to briefly introduce the network I'm coordinating? It's a joint program initiative. It's a network of research and innovation funders. So we are collaborating for coordinating and implementing research and innovation in order to provide solutions to the current challenges. It could be linked to floods or drought, or in the current situation to fate of COVID-19 in water resources. So we had a cooperation with Brazil since now 4 years. We started with some technical workshop where we identified that we had common water challenges and also interest to join forces. As you may see, the current situation, if you don't have water, then you don't have access also to some measures to combat COVID-19. And we need to have a critical mass. So we need to join forces with all the countries. So we launched some concrete actions, firstly with Confap and the FAPs, so the federal and the state agencies. So I'm very pleased because we had 18 agencies from the states in the first call, 15 in the second. So thanks to Confap for bringing all those state agencies in there. And now we have projects, research projects with Brazilian colleagues involved, researchers involved in, because this is insufficient. We have also some additional exchange. And in particular, there is what we call a sectoral dialogue on research and innovation for water challenges, which is managed by, on one side, the European Commission, and on the other side, Brazilian Ministry for Research and Science, and in which ANA is taking part also, because there is one on water. I think this is really a crucial theme for also future cooperation. We are currently working for a larger partnership on water security for the planet, and this will be funded by the European Commission and the countries, and I do hope, because we have the same challenges, to have Brazil on board. We have very good and intense cooperation, and I do hope that in the future it will even increase.
Perfect. So, same question to Professor Oscar. How do you see, sir, the cooperation between Brazil and the European Union regarding this subject?
You know, ANA is the National Water Agency in Brazil. We are responsible for the implementation of our water resource policies. The first time ANA presented a project within the European Union, Brazil Dialogues, was 10 years ago in 2010. And that time we focused on the Water Framework Directive and its connection with the national Brazilian system of water resource management. Then, 8 years later, after the World Water Forum 8 held in Brasilia, ANA was again encouraged to present a new proposal of cooperation to be built together with the European Union. We call this time this EU-Brazil exchange building a cooperation on sustainable integrated water resource management. The main purpose was to analyze Brazilian states. Brazil is a federation, and we can compare with the organization of the European Union with many countries. And we want to take into account economic, climate, hydrographic, water infrastructure, and water use aspects, and the challenges we face in Brazil regarding water resource management. For that new experience in dialogues, we had an expert from Brazil and one expert from Portugal to go through a series of topics covered during a first workshop held in Brasilia, September last year. And from then on to build a roadmap to guide the cooperation between Brazil and European Union on water-related issues. Delegation of specialists from National Water Agency, ANA, led by me, went to Europe last October, and we had meetings with local focal points in European institutions, as in the Directorate General for the Environment and DG in Brussels, Minister of Ecological Transition and the Water Basin Agency, Saint-Normandy in France, and finally the Portuguese Environmental Agency in Lisbon. And from all those meetings, we came up with participation of 2 experts, came up with 6 priority topics. The first one is how to internalize the Water Framework Directive in each member state. It's European level issue. Second one, dam safety. The third, the role of planning in different geographical scales. Number 4, water transfers between basins. And number 5, how to deal with droughts. And finally, very important issue nowadays in Brazil, water supply and sanitation regulation. These topics were discussed in depth last March here in Brasilia during the last workshop we had within the scope of this partnership. We gathered more than 100 participants from Brazilian and international institutions. Bear in mind the priorities we have set. We hope to continue cooperation with the European Union and put into practice the roadmap we built together. I can assure you that ANA has taken great advantage in this partnership.
Perfect. So continuing talking about ANA and start talking about something very recent in Brazil, the new law, the new sanitary law just approved by the Brazilian Congress. How is ANA dealing with this new sum of rules, we can say, about the sanitation in Brazil?
Carlo, as you mentioned, we have recently passed in our Congress a law called the Basic Sanitation Regulatory Framework. Basic sanitation is a concept we have here in Brazil. We have to define basic sanitation for you. It takes into account 4 components of health and engineering. The first one is drink water supply, the second one sewage collection and treatment, the third urban drainage, and the fourth urban solid waste management. So we call these 4 components as basic sanitation. And we have passed this law last month here in Brazil. The objective is to achieve universal access to safe water and also to good sanitation. ANA has at least 3 new roles. The most important role is to set standards for companies and municipalities responsible for those components of base sanitation. We know that we have a big challenge ahead. Nowadays, at about 84% of our population have access to clean water, but only 53% has sewage collection and 46% sewage treatment. So we want to have an universal access in 20 years. We have, as I told you, a big challenge, and we could exchange experience with our partners in Europe and learn from them, since many member states of the European Union have already gone through what we are about to go through right now.
A question about this point, about the sanitation law. Professor, in Brazil, we have more than 50% of the population that actually has no access to appropriately sanitation, you can say, and not only water, but also all the framework of sanitation. So how much time you think we will need for solve this problem here in Brazil, and how this law can help to solve this problem, how this new law can help to solve
we
this
have
problem.
a 20-year challenge established by the law to achieve this new situation in Brazil related to safe water and sanitation. And the main idea is to organize the sector here in Brazil, improving regulatory governance, because we have Brazil, it's a federation with more than, we have 27 states and more than 5,000 municipalities, and we have a lot of standards, a lot of kind of contracts between municipalities and companies responsible for water supply and sanitation. So the sector is not well organized. The first ambition of the law is to establish new standards for our country. This is where the idea is simplify contracts and simplify also the access of other players to the sanitation and water supply system in Brazil.
Perfect. So let's hope that in this 20 years challenge we can face this problem and to give proper water and sanitation to all Brazilians. So let's continue our interview talking about what's also ANA and Europe as a whole, states, the European Union and Water GPI can doing or are doing with in fields related to water resources and COVID-19. I mean, in terms of public policy and support to research and innovation. I would like to start with Dr. Dominique about this subject.
So just to put this in perspective, you have to imagine that the European Union is comparable to Brazil. We have 28 countries, 27 without UK, and we still have some challenges in terms of access to drinking water or sanitation, even if it's less crucial than in Brazil. Nevertheless, during the last months, you may have seen that we were, I would say, quite lucky in the EU because we had no water shortage during the confinement, the lockdown. So that was quite good. So we had most of the people connected to drinking water and sanitation. But nevertheless, we had also some concerns about COVID in the water resources because we found COVID in non-potable networks of water. For example, in Paris, we have two networks, one collecting, the rainfalls and used for cleaning the streets or irrigating the parks. In the monitoring, we found some COVID. So there were a lot of concern about can COVID, be founded in the water resources, in the drinking water. So we have two levels of actions currently in this public policy and research, on research and innovation. There are many actions at the member states level, so at the state level, comparable to Brazil. So most of the member states have their own research and innovation program on COVID. So for example, in France, in the last call, we have two projects on water challenges in COVID. One is going on the understanding of the dissemination and the stability of the COVID in the environments, in particular in the aquatic environments and in the coastal areas. Because you can imagine that, for example, in the seafood, you can have accumulation of some elements, pollutants, but also virus. And the second one is what you may have seen is that as we found also COVID in the wastewater treat, the residues, and we think that we could map the COVID dissemination by using a monitoring of the wastewater quality. So looking at what is collected and then going backward and try to identify where are the population infected. So most of the countries have this type of national programs. And then there are also some calls done by the European Commission, so the federal level, comparable to yours. So there are several calls on the COVID. For the moment at the EU level, I'm not aware of something in relation to water challenges in those calls, but then the Joint Research Center, which is the kind of common joint research center for EU, has an initiative for exchanging on the results on this surveillance, using the sewers, so the sewage systems for mapping the COVID dissemination. So the GRC will collect all the data from the member states and try to have a synthesis on this monitoring to see if we can really use it and so be better prepared in the future. So we could follow the wastewater treatment also on the COVID existence and stability, and then see if there are some problems in the population before having the effects seen on else. Just to let you know, we know now that, for example, in the sewage, the first indicators, we found COVID in December, even if the first wave was mainly in March and April in Europe. So that's where we are in Europe. For the next partnership that I just mentioned for the future, we will have also now a specific attention to the COVID in terms of, do we need to have a larger call for raising or for addressing different scientific challenges, but we will also have to deal with new ways to do research in such context. And for sure, as I said before, I do hope that we will have a close cooperation with Brazil, as I know that we have the same challenges. So that's where we are in Europe.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So, Professor Oscar, the same question for you. What ANA is doing in fields related to water resources and COVID-19, the actual situation here in Brazil? Professor.
As Dominique said, we have the same challenges here in Brazil, but as it's widely known, COVID-19 affects people in different ways, especially when we talk about a country such as Brazil with huge social disparities. Taking into account that one of the ways to prevent infection is washing hands frequently. If vulnerable communities do not have access to clean water, chances are that infection will spread easily around those groups. Poor people nowadays is more affected in Brazil. At ANA, the National Water Agency, we are currently developing a study with the Federal University of Minas Gerais to evaluate virus prevalence in sewage water, sewage treatment plants, and also urban drainage. It was, in fact, the first attempt, the first experience since we are working with the Federal University since March. We are now building with other 10 research centers and also with our Ministry of Science and Technology in order to build a network, the mission of investigation of the relation between the urban water and the prevalence of virus. And we hope we can cooperate with Europe Union in those themes.
Let's hope that this kind of measures can help the current situation here in Brazil as well. I think, unfortunately, our time is finished. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Dominique Darmendrail, Water GPI Coordinator at the French Research Founding Agency. Thank you very much for being with us. Merci beaucoup.
Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado. And also to Professor Oscar Cordeiro Netto, Director of the Brazilian National Water Agency. Leana, thank you as well to be with us, sir.
Muito obrigado também. Thank you a lot.
Merci beaucoup.
This is the end of our second podcast of Innovation Station. We will come back again next week. Stay with us. Follow our podcast here on Spotify to stay in touch with our new podcast. Once again, thank you very much and see you soon.